Are you doing the intro or am I doing
You said that you wanted to start first. It's not how we normally do it, and now you're going to have to leave this in.
I know. How does the intro even go?
We go, hey, everybody, this is Adkins.
That's right. Hey, everybody, this is Adkins.
No, that's my line.
I know.
Just leave it in. That's Adam who's goofed this whole thing up. But it's been a while. We're rusty as hell. As might be understandable, we haven't put out an episode in at least 4 weeks.
It's been longer than that for me. It's been like 3 months since I've been on the AMP. But let's rewind real quick. Hey, everybody, this is Adam.
And this is Adkins.
And we are welcoming you to another episode of the Almighty Podcast. As we just said, it's been a long time since the two of us have sat down and recorded. I mean, it's been at least 3 months, right?
It's been a while, yeah. And Adam is subjecting me to a face cam against my will. I thought about holding up a newspaper with today's date on it. But I have somewhat mistakenly set precedent for my face being on the internet playing D&D 5e with some of the folks at the BPN for Rocks and Rune Lords. Right. And as like the first night that I did that, I was like, this is going to set a terrible precedent. And Adam's going to reel me in for a video episode of the AMP. So if you're just listening, it's fine. This is probably the best way to consume the AMP is my faceless. But if you're curious, Adam is also recording the video of our faces, and we're describing the comic strips of Smash Volume 3, which is what we're covering, top 10s from Smash Volume 3 today, then he will also have those on the screen so you can see them in addition to however we may describe them for our audio-only folks.
Exactly. And the link will be in the description of the podcast episode if you're interested. If you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, it'll also be there. I think it's youtube.com/TheRealSimzo. So if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, any of those places. Is Twitter even still a thing? I don't even know.
It's weird.
It's like weird.
Yeah. So like on my phone, the main icon to enter the app is an X now, but not in the folder in which it's contained. So like, you know how there are like layers, levels. There's like the home screen, and then I have a folder for social media. If you're looking just at the folder from the outside, it's still the bird. But as soon as you click into that folder, then it turns into an X. It's just whatever. I mean, it is what
it's got. 3 more months, and then we'll all be on Threads or whatever that other replacement was.
Yeah, there's always something, man. But
there really is.
Yeah.
But I really did think that today's episode would be great to do video with, if anything, because we are covering the school briefs, not the school briefs. I'm sorry, the Smash volumes. Yeah, the school briefs. We don't speak of those, but the Smash volumes, which are like these gag strips. This volume in particular felt more slice of life, really like. I feel like Volume 1 and 2 were really kind of random gag strips, the kind of almost like a Marvel What If you've ever read the What If stuff. But in this scenario, it's really more just like things that could have happened and had a funny twist to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of filling in of blanks. For instance, we get to ride on the bus to and from the camp. That's kind of the time at summer camp working on enhancing their quirks is the central big like anime event or manga canonical event that's kind of at the center of this. So we get some material just before that, some material just after. And so like, for instance, again, we do see them on the bus briefly on their way to camp. We spend some more time on the bus just kind of unpacking what other conversations and shenanigans might have gone down on that bus ride, along with some other non-canonical events that take place that are pretty fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, unless you've got any My Hero news to cover, why don't you say we hop into these?
Yeah, I don't have any news outside of, we'll say at the beginning of the episode today that since it's been a while, one, you can find us on Twitter /X/ whatever else, at AlmightyPod. And if you visit that account, then you can also visit the pinned tweet or whatever the hell they're going to call it from now on. And
like X's?
Yeah, whatever.
Targets? They'd have to be
dumb.
Targets, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not paying attention. But if you visit the pinned, whatever the hell they're called now, there's a link to the Discord. We've during our hiatus, in our absence, we've had a couple of folks join the Discord recently for AMP purposes, including Charlie and X. Mark himself has joined BPN's Discord and popped into the Almighty podcast channel, appropriately enough, as he has been a part of over half a dozen episodes with us, I think, at this point.
Yeah. Mark, I always appreciate you stepping in and filling in for me, pal. It's, I had a bum knee for a little while, and Adkins needed all the help he could get.
It's true. And Mark is always a team player when it comes to stuff like that. He is, again, contractually obligated to rejoin us for future team-up missions, and he is just fine with that. Maybe even a little excited. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I do think that he enjoys the process.
Well, what do you say we go ahead and hop in, man? I will go ahead and kick us off with my first particular comic here.
Your strip. Not
Yes.
not to be, now that we're working in a video medium, not to be confused with a strip tease. He is not stripping. He is putting a comic strip on the screen.
That's right, and Mineta is actually not involved at all in this one. But if Mineta was, then striptease could potentially be, it
would be on the table.
Expected.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm going to kick us off. This was one of the earlier chapters. I can't remember exactly which chapter it was, but this one's called "Cautionary Tale of Deku." And basically, in this first chapter, he's been helping all of the kids that didn't do their summer homework, and he's been exhausted. And it's so funny because in this one, they're like, "Hey, we're all done. We'll see you at school tomorrow." And he's just kind of like, awesome, I've got 30 minutes left until the next day starts. I think they were literally going to miss school almost because there was only 8 hours left before. And so he gets down, he's chilling out, and he just kind of falls asleep. And it's great because he ends up missing class that first day back. So he's totally not there, just probably late if he even makes it at all. But I just thought that was so funny because it's very up Midoriya's alley, like to go out of his way to help everybody else and then to actually miss the thing that was so important to him. So very, very Midoriya.
It's very self-sacrificial in that way.
Yeah.
I thought it would have made more sense. I can't remember that strip. And there's a lot of kind of fuzziness around some of the events that precipitate, I guess, these strips.
Well, they took place forever ago compared to where we're at now.
Yeah, definitely. But it would have made more sense to have Momo doing some tutoring, I guess. Because
she's too smart for that.
She no, she does that in the show.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I guess that's what, it's not like Deku's dumb. But Momo, that's her niche, man. She has the dummies over at her fancy mansion and feeds them tea and crumpets or cookies or whatever.
I wonder, could she produce reports completed?
That's a good question. I would assume so, just based on if she knows the chemical makeup. Are you saying could she produce a piece of paper that has her signature on it without actually putting a pen into her hand?
Yeah, exactly. Or anyone's, right? If she was able to study one of Deku's papers, could she potentially reproduce that in some way?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, on the surface, it seems like if she knew the chemical makeup that she could, and that she would be able to layer it, because those little nesting dolls are layered. So even if you had the chemical makeup of the paper, and then on top of that would be the chemical makeup of pen ink. And you could kind of almost 3D print it that way. That there's precedent for a layering effect. She's not just printing out a sheet of something.
And also copying handwriting. I wonder, it feels like it's plausible that she could get ink on paper, but potentially not plausible that she could actually write. Does that make sense?
Yeah. If she did it, it might be more something that you would see come out of a printer. There wouldn't be the the slight indentations from a ballpoint pen or whatnot. I don't think that would be the case. Or
it's her mastered level up powers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, the other question is I wonder how closely she could replicate handwriting, because there's this, there's gradings for things like signatures and markers for authenticity, and certain experts can look at two very similar looking autographs and be able to distinguish the true one from one that was a fraud or a phony or fake, whatever you want to call it. So I wonder how refined she could make that, if it would be an exact replication or not. That's a good question. If you think you have an answer to this question, hit us up at AlmightyPod on Twitter and let us know.
Or leave it in the comments down below. I can actually say that.
Yeah, that's right.
There is actually that's gonna come up in one of my other comic strips because Momo's involved in it and creating items. So we'll come back to that. But for now, Adkins, I'll hand it over to you, pal.
All right, my first one is called Number 3 Hero Gets a Promotion. This one, so Adam, I listened back to the last time we covered a Smash Volume 2. It was like a year ago at this point, I think. It was number 80 something, and this is number 133, I think. Anyway, this very much reminded me of one of the comic strips that you put in your top 10 then, that didn't make it into mine at the time, but it's very similar vibe. So in it, Kaminari is sitting at a beach, a promontory, maybe seeing some fish in the water, and Endeavor has told the students that they're each responsible for catching their own dinner, and Kaminari, being unable to make things out of his body like Momo can, has got to sort out exactly what he's going to do. So we see like Endeavor going to fetch up some abalone. So he's got some, I was going to say scuba, but that's not correct. This is snorkeling gear. And he's gone under the water, and Kaminari just decides that he can just zap the water and scoop fish up. And so he does. He jams his hand into the water and uses his quirk. And later on, I guess some undetermined amount of time later, Bakugo and Asui are standing on the beach wondering where old Flameface is and if anybody has seen him. And Kaminari is in his yay mode, and he's just like, not me? ? And he's got his fish. Awesome. And then we just see a Endeavor floating face down in the sea. It's pretty great.
The only thing that would have made this better is if this was Todoroki and he's like, hey, has anybody seen Dad?
Yeah. So in Volume 2, there were like 2 panels that you put up that were similar to this. One of them, and it was Asui, who was I think she was the unfortunate recipient of a shot from Kaminari. I can't remember what the other one was, but basically somebody did something to the water and it hurt poor Asui. So it feels like a recycled joke, but I think just the face down floating Endeavor worked for me in a way that the other ones didn't.
Well, and it's so plausible with Kaminari that he would just totally blank and, not even think about something like that. So, and do it multiple times at this point in the story.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we hold all of the Smash volumes in continuity with one another, then he's doing something that he has already done before. So he should know there is a risk factor to this, that he should clear the immediate vicinity of human beings, and yet he does it again. So that's kind of great.
Well, I'll go ahead and take us into our next one. This one I was cracking up about. So this is Darkish Night, and the whole concept is All Might is basically grading all of the kids on how well they are at being dramatic when rescuing him in a situation. And there are a couple of flopped ones, in my opinion, on this one, but for Tokoyami here, he shows up, and All Might's just like, wait, aren't you going to save me? And he just turns around, how naive, and he says, reality is so rarely forgiving. And he says, don't expect heroes to save the day every time. And All Might's just standing there like, but wait, what? And so Tokoyami's unlocked the door and just tells him to go ahead, like, you can get out of here. And I don't know, I thought this was great because at the end, All Might is just like, yeah, this is awesome. And he describes Tokoyami as being the anti-hero, and he's too cool, and he got a really high scoring. So that one just cracked me up. I thought that was pretty funny.
I think 2 of mine, not this next one, but 2 of mine are from that same gag where they're trying to rescue All Might, and I thought 2 of them were excellent. Tokoyami didn't make my cut, but I'm glad that he made yours.
Yeah, I love it too, because I think there's at one point where All Might, it may even have to be after the first panel or the first one, All Might is just kind of like, screw it, just be dramatic. I don't even care if you save me anymore.
Yeah, that's what it was. He gave the explicit instructions to make your heroism dramatic, and 2 of the other Class 1A students do that in a much more effective way, I think.
Well, let's go ahead and transition over to your next one.
All right, this one is called Super Effective, and literally I picked it because of the last panel, so I'm going to speed run my way to it. So basically the conceit is they were all sent out. This is, Monoma is, the contest is loosely go and catch some bugs, like some Goliath beetles or something like that. And so there are some panels of various members of Class 1A trying to do so and successfully doing so and giving some away, yada yada. So when it comes time to compare results, there are some excuses proffered to Monoma, who says, well, it doesn't look like you actually did the thing, so maybe you didn't step up to meet my challenge. And Todoroki and Ida have used some sort of drone bugs, maybe. I can't recall the thing around it. But Midoriya has caught himself a Sado. And so like this last panel is just Midoriya saying, I caught a human, and it has like, it's a Pokemon parody. So he says, I caught a human, and it has the little symbol for male too. And he says, go Rikido. And he throws Sado out, who says Riki as if he were a Pokemon, who's only capable of saying his own name in some form, even if it's truncated. And then it says at the bottom that Trainer Midoriya's human male defeated Monoma, and it was just it was a silly gag. It was it was a punchline to an otherwise uneventful and kind of lackluster vignette of panels, of comic strips. But this really, it put a good bow on it, so I picked that for that last panel alone.
I feel like there were so many Pokemon references in the bug catching chapter. I mean, obviously so. It makes sense for the bug catchers in general, but I like that. This is pretty funny.
Yeah, I think Midori ended up catching a Sado because he was trying to use
he
something
was, like,
saccharine.
Yeah, wasn't he like dressed up as a bug?
Sado was, yeah. And like Midoriya tried to bait with sugar, and so he was like, oh, I guess, yeah, he would be attracted to sugar because of his baking. Because of his... Yeah, kind of the loose connection there.
Yeah.
What's your next one, bud?
So we've got, in this one, we've got this one called The Gambling Granny, and basically there is Nezu involved, and something is happening. I don't remember exactly what was going on in this chapter, but effectively there are some villains that want to play some mahjong because they've taken a couple of hostages, and so he's trying to get everyone into this to play, and it's funny because basically someone, and I think it's Kaminari, yeah. He's like, well, how did we play with just the three of us? And Nezu says Mahjong has 3-player variation, but it gets complicated, so I've summoned some aid. And we actually get in the old recovery girl. I always call her Medical Granny.
Yeah, you do. But you nailed it that time, though. You caught yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at the picture, so
I'm cheating. It says it.
But veteran gambler recovery girl, and she says, we playing by the Kuatan appendix rules or what? And says she plays for keeps. And I think this just cracked me up because for a while my wife worked at a retirement home is what I will lovingly refer to it as. And every time I walked in there would be like a table of elderly women trying to convince me to play bridge. And this just reminded me of that. And I still to this day have no idea what bridge is. But just that context alone, I was just thinking of those people and had me cracking up.
My next two, which I'll take one at a time so that we can go back and forth, are, again, the Rescue All Might. And these come after him being like, make it dramatic. So this one's called Here's Momo Yao, and she's like, a healthy amount of suspense will make for a dramatic entrance as she retrieves a chainsaw from her bosom via creation. And so there's this like third panel where All Might hears the sound of a chainsaw, which is just always a frightening sound if you're not in the woods somewhere. And so he's sitting there, like, basically holding his knees to his chest, and all of a sudden this chainsaw cuts a doorway into the wall near him, and as it falls over, there's Momo, and she's got this chainsaw. It looks straight out of, like, a horror movie. Of course, the pun in the title is a joke straight out of The Shining, which doesn't involve a chainsaw. This is kind of like a mix of The Shining and Chainsaw Massacre. And so the wall thuds down, and All Might is just scared to death because Momo's got like these blank, lifeless eyes and is standing shrouded, holding this chainsaw between her and him. And she says, "I'm here for you to save you." And I like this scene. We see it in other places where this is kind of being projected to the other students as they watch. And it looks very much like they're watching this at a drive-in, like a horror movie at the drive-in. And the best part is that this is working for Mineta. Like he is seeing Momo be this scary movie villain, and he's just like, this is actually working for me. So he's got like this. I don't think he would mind playing the victim to Momo Yao is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, this one was good. And this kind of reminds me of that area when I think there was that season where like half of it was 1A and 1B, like facing off against each other, and they had that kind of big screen that they were able to view the proceedings or the fights. I think that's where they're at, kind of.
Yep.
Why don't we go ahead and go into your next one?
Oh, since they're adjacent?
Yeah.
All right, this one's called Soapy, and this might be my favorite one of the whole volume. There's a
Really?
Yeah, I just thought it was so stinking funny. There's another one that comes in like a close second that I'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, so the again, going for drama points, this is Kaminari's turn. And it's called Soapy, and I just have to read this straight up. You'll get the visuals if you're watching. Otherwise, it's just imagine it's very dramatically drawn. Kirishima, he's bloodied, beaten down, and he's sitting in amongst this rubble, and he says, "Today was my baby girl's birthday. I wish I wasn't always letting her down like this. It's looking like Daddy might be late to the party, and I'll never get to give to you that doll that you wanted." And he says, "Sorry, I couldn't be a better father." And then he like crumples over as like this projection of his like smiling visage is in the background, like a dream image. And so somebody exclaims that he just straight up died. And so All Might at the last panel is crying in the bottom right hand corner, saying that it was so dramatic. And he gives him a full 100 points, and everybody else is just like, he didn't even bother with the rescue part. He was just dramatic, and it was so funny to me.
When I read this, the first thought I had was like, this straight up would have been a Toonami commercial.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah.
What is it? The one that always sticks out to me is where they start off with like, "A boy deserves to dream" or something like that. Yeah. You know, this would have been part of that commercial.
That one got me pretty good. There's one more awesome that I might like as a close second, but this I really do think that's my favorite comic strip of Volume 3.
That's funny. Well, we'll go ahead and get into my third. This one was called How the Other Half Lives. And this was great because they're all at the mall. They had I think this was like after they did a handful of like training sessions with a few different people. They were at the mall just trying to, this is slice of life stuff really. And Momo is just like enamored with the food court. She's like, "What? Is this what they call a food court?" And Kaminari's there, and she says that she's always wanted to be at such a place like that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll treat you." And I wasn't sure. There's a panel in here where they says, "What a princess, too cute." I don't think that's Kaminari thinking about her, but it easily could be. But she's just kind of like moseying around. I'm pretty sure that
it is Kaminari talking about Momo there.
Yeah, I guess it has to be with the amount of times that him and Mineta are just like fantasizing over her. Or
macking on girls. Momo.
Yeah. But it was great here because she's just kind of walking around like observing the food court, and she even waits in line. It looks like, and then like gets up to the front and doesn't order anything, and he's just like, "What? Not hungry?" And she says, "No, I was just here to observe." Gosh. Like at a zoo or something. And she's just got this real deadpan face. I thought that was great.
So that is one of the ones that I had originally clipped just in case I didn't find 10 that were actually like, to me, had some humor in them.
Yeah.
In part because, and Momo she gets treated this way. Again, Smash kind of takes a lot of these characters' character
to the extreme.
Yeah, cranks it up to 11. To use the pop culture vernacular. And so this one I really liked as like a silly exaggeration of Momo's character. Like genuinely, I thought that I was like, yeah, I could see her being like, this is how, how the other half lives, which is exactly what the title of that one was. There was like a whole section in the volume where Momo is sent to go live with Ochako for a little while, and it had very similar vibes. I didn't pull a comic strip out of that section either, I don't think, at least not for my top 10.
I think I might have. If not, it was one that got eliminated, because there were some in that I thought were actually really funny.
Yeah.
It was funny too because it was like a punishment. Like people were basically just like, yeah, as your punishment, because you're not confident enough, because you're so entitled, we're gonna have you go stay with Ochako to live, or like how she would. And Ochako's just kind of like, I don't know if I like that.
Well, and so next to Momo's character being exaggerated there in those panels, so is Ochako's. Her frugality is cranked up some, and but Ochako's frugality is cranked up not to like an overly comical degree. It's actually to like right on the fringe of totally believable based on what we've seen and known about her, which makes those panels really fun too.
Yeah, I thought so. So we'll go into my next one here. This one is called Missed Opportunity. And again, this is another mall scene where for one reason or another, basically all the kids kind of end up split up. And I think it was just because the mall was so busy. And obviously Midoriya ends up with Ochako, and he's like, "Oh, we barely made it." And Ochako's like, "Yeah, I hope everyone's okay." And they realize, oh, it's just the two of us all alone. And then there's another scene here where Jiro ends up with Kirishima, and then Momo's with Kaminari. This is all right before the mall or the food court incident. it's great because all of them kind of realize like, oh, is this a date? And off to the distance is old Mineta hanging out with just Ida, and Ida's all about it. He's like super ecstatic, it seems like, to just chill with his homie Mineta, but Mineta's grape sense is tingling, and he's like, the road forked and I took the path less bodacious or something.
Yeah. That one I also pulled but didn't make my top 10.
That one I thought was pretty funny. There are a couple of just moments where I can totally see Mineta having some sixth sense of like, everyone's on a date but me,
My next one is called a miscommunication. This takes place on the bus ride to the camp. Ochako is sitting next to Asui, and they're both excited about the possibilities of what this camp will be like. And Ochako's excited to make some curry with everyone, and Sue begins describing what she hopes to find, which is this nice mountain stream with clear, cold, sparkling water in the sun, and moss growing on rocks, and dragonflies, and fireflies, and stoneflies. And Ochako kind of looks over at Sue, and she's like, all tasty treats, huh? And Sue explains that it wasn't a menu. She just likes nature. She was describing a picture. And it was just funny that Ochako thought that she was overdoing the frog bit and talking about looking forward to munching on some flies, possibly because of the proximity to Ochako's own desire for food inside of the same panel.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Just her really living that up. And it felt like such a moment that you would have seen in that first X-Men movie with Toad. They made some awful frog jokes in that one, and I could have seen something like this popping up.
What happens when a toad gets struck by lightning?
Exactly.
Same thing that happens to everything else. Joss Whedon just bears great shame for that line a little bit.
No joke.
Because that is directly his, I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right, yeah. So this was the one I was referencing earlier, kind of piggybacking off of Momo being able to create things and whether or not they're exact replicas or not. This one was called Yayoromazan.com, like a play on Amazon.com.
Oh, yeah, that's one of mine, too. We got some overlap. Yeah,
we probably will. We have good taste.
Yayoromazan is how I would have pronounced that.
See, you're much better with the names than me. But there's a moment here where Sero, I'm pretty sure that Sero pops up, and he's just like, are you just tossing out all this junk? Because this is when they're at the summer camp. They're basically trying to harden their powers by just like pushing them to the limit. So she's just creating as much quantity as she can. And he's looking through it, and he's like, well, that's a shame. It all seems perfectly usable. And she goes, oh, well, you're welcome to it. And he's like, oh, for real? Cool. And then later, there's a scene here in a panel where your girl Jiro is walking by, and she notices Sero's computer, and she looks at it, and it's like on eBay. He's got all this like new Bluetooth speaker and like all these other things, and she's just like, Sero, you dirtbag. I thought this was great. Yeah, because I mean, it says about $98 for the 9,800 yen Bluetooth speaker, but we know that Momo has specifically been like, I can't disrupt the economy with my abilities. And over here is Sero just like, well, I'm going to make a couple extra bucks if I can.
Yeah, and he's in the third panel. He's basically exploiting her because he's like, this would be a good practice item, right? And she's like, what is it? And he's like, it's the latest smartphone. No reason, Yeah. I also liked the touch that the back of his computer screen is like a tape dispenser, and where the Apple might be on like a Mac per se.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even pick that up. That's
cool
awesome.
Touch.
Yeah, that is a cool touch. And see, this is where I was wondering too, like if he's showing her the latest smartphone, do you think she's printing out like manuals? Like, is it coming in the original packaging and everything,
Maybe that's why he has to label the Bluetooth speaker like new. Instead of like, NRFB or, never removed from box or whatever the Dexter's Lab joke was. It's just like, it's not been used, but it doesn't come in the original packaging.
Yeah, because in the top panel, he's just holding that speaker. So yeah, you got to be right there. And everything else looks like it's just a lamp and a bin. There even looks like there's a cinder block or something here. So, that's awesome.
If it sells,
it sells. Yeah,
I've seen some weirder things sold on the internet in my days.
No joke.
Oof. All right, my next one takes place at the camp as well, and it's just called Wooden. I picked this one in part because I knew that this would get our friend Batman Beyond Mark fired up a little bit because he hates the shade that gets thrown at Ojiro, and it happens hard in this particular strip.
Yeah.
So Midori walks up to Ojiro, who, like, the gag throughout this manga or this the Smash Volume 2 is that he feels like he's just being ignored. So any kind of attention thrown in his direction, he gets super excited about. And so Midori's like, hey, do you want to spar? And Ojiro's like, oh, people are noticing me less and less lately, so for you to reach out, he's like, of course, I'll be your sparring partner. And so Midori says, let's do this, and he goes on the assault, but he ends up kicking a tree and exclaims, presumably out loud, I thought that was Ojiro, because Ojiro says, "Please tell me that was a joke," and Midori is just standing there frozen, like, because he can't say with a straight and honest face that it was just a joke. He really just attacked a tree thinking that it was Ojiro.
This was that Anakin Padme meme, you know?
Yeah. Please tell me that was a joke. That was a joke, right?
That was a joke, right? Yeah. Is Ojiro even in any of the other chapters? I legitimately think this might be the only thing he appears in.
It might be during this little vignette of panels that he makes his only appearance. I can't recall strictly.
Yeah, I read all the chapters today, so I may be a little bit more familiar with him, as always, prepping at the last minute there. But I feel like I don't remember seeing him in anything else, so, man, that's funny.
Yeah, my next one was the Yayo Yayo, so we doubled up on that one, which is good. Gotcha. I like it's good when we have some overlap, but I do also enjoy the diversity of comics that we pick when we do this.
There's no way our next one's not an overlap. I'm calling it now. There's no way you don't have this one chosen. So this one is called An Earful.
Yep, that's my next one.
Okay, yep. This one was too good. So Jiro is basically like jump roping with her ears, it looks like, or at least swishing them around. It's kind of hard to tell what exactly she's doing in this panel. But she's trying to strengthen her lobe jacks. And she's kind of looking down at them, and she's like, it looks like they're getting thicker. And she says, if this keeps up, and then there's this little like imaginary panel of her just swole.
It's disgusting looking.
It really is.
She has giant veiny penises hanging from her ears, basically, and that's why I picked it. Like they did Jiro dirty. Like oh, by the way, as we're recording, this is her birthday. 8/1.
Is it really?
Yeah. But yeah, this visual alone of her with these like thick as a forearm earphone jacks coming off of her ears made me laugh out loud and cringe real hard. I couldn't not include it, even though she's definitely the butt of a joke here.
There was a part of me too that for some reason I was just imagining her like in a gym locker with a needle and a syringe, like pumping testosterone
into her earlobes.
Jacks.
Yeah,
yeah.
Gross.
And, like Momo stumbling across her, like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to.
Like
I built like a whole thing behind this picture. I don't know why.
There's a small part of me that wanted so bad to make this picture of Jiro my profile picture in all things without context, but it would invite too many questions outside of the fandom, so I just can't do it. But it is that funny of a visual.
It really is.
Absolutely.
And if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it.
Yeah. I mean, at some point I may, maybe after this episode goes live, maybe I'll post just that picture as a panel, because it has to be seen. And then I'm sorry that you won't ever be able to unsee it. It's one of those like haunting, funny images.
Yes, like you just, once you see it, you have to share it with other people. It's blurst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love the last panel too, because
Izawa.
Izawa, catches her like leaning up against a tree, and he's just like, "Are you slacking off?" And she says, "Who, me? Nah." It's just great.
I listened to the Destructo Discourse. I've talked about that before, and in one of their more recent episodes, I've been playing catch up because my summer was so busy. That's why there's been no AMP for so long. But I was listening to one of their episodes, and they started talking about My Hero, and one of the hosts was like, "Yeah, isn't there like they were talking about a character from Dragonball that was a mummy and had these like binding claws that he had unique control over." And she was like, "Isn't there like a hero in the My Hero anime that has a cloth that works like that?" And like I'm walking around my yard with a weed eater and headphones on, and I'm saying Izawa over and over again as they don't get his name. I'm like, "It's Izawa." "Yeah, what was that guy's name?" "It's Izawa." "Just call him Eraserhead and let's move on." Like, somebody's got to know this man's name. Finally, one of them was like, "Oh yeah, like Pro Hero Eraserhead," and I was like, "Okay, that works." But I was talking to the podcast host.
That's funny.
As they were talking about one of my favorite characters.
Who in DBZ has something like that?
Not DBZ. They're actually doing Dragon Ball right now.
Oh, they're doing Dragon Ball. Okay.
Yeah, they did Dragon Ball Z first. Then they went and did GT. Now they're working through Dragon Ball. They even recently covered Curse of the Blood Rupees, which was fun because we covered that in our other podcast, Kaio-Cinema.
Tell them to back off our 3 listeners.
I know. Well, our 1. It's me, you, and then Raw32, I think, is the only other person on the planet that's listening to Kaio-Cinema.
We're going to come up with some kind of Dragon Ball Z content or Dragon Ball content that someone loves, I swear.
I know.
Well, we need to cover that weird, well, I say weird, that's not nice to say. We're going to cover that online, like,
Dragon Ball Heroes.
Yeah,
I want to get into that.
It looks like it's kind of interesting. So I did see that there's some new Super manga that's been confirmed, or at least leaked from like a reliable source, that there's some new stuff coming out as far as the anime and the manga goes. So
well, so far in Super, they're as far as the manga is concerned, they're still covering. They're like halfway through, maybe a little over halfway through the superhero movie. Like Orange Piccolo just popped at the very end
when
of
I
the
left
last
off,
chapter.
I think I was dealing with the Cerealians. I think that was their names.
Yeah.
The cereal people.
Yeah.
So cool. That's exciting. Well, let's go ahead and get into your next one here. You can't see my screen, so I see it. It is called Once More with Feeling.
Yes, I was going to say we got to skip 2 of mine since we had some overlap there. So Once More with Feeling, it's Izawa centric. Both of my last 2 are. And so they're in the woods, and Izawa says, well, I'm going to play the part of the terrified civilian that you have to come rescue me, and you have to try to keep me calm while guiding me home safely. And Midoriya is like, you're going to act scared? And Izawa's like, yeah, is that a problem? And the reason that I love this strip is because of this specific panel where Midoriya is trying to imagine Izawa scared, and Aizawa's got like his hands up near his face, and he's crying, and he looks very much like
feminine.
very like a scared female. No bloodshot eyes. And Midoriya's just like, no problem, I guess, but that's hard to imagine. And Sero says, well, what about a demonstration? And Izawa, with as stoic a face as always, says, eek, help. I am so very scared. And in a later panel that I didn't include, at one point he is playing that civilian and being rescued by somebody, and he says like a similar thing, but he includes the word etc. at the end. So he's like, help, I'm so very scared, etc.
I could see him being like ETC.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Oh man, Izawa, great stuff, man.
Well, I only have 1 left, so you'll have to play some catch up probably.
Yes. So my next one, this one was one that was really cracking me up. So it's Halloween. I really liked the Halloween chapter in general. Actually, it was a lot of fun. But there's a panel
some of the
here.
League of Villains in that.
Yeah, we did. There was
they
one
popped in and out.
Or maybe 2 chapters that were entirely League of Villains.
Yeah.
That were pretty fun. They were good. I don't think I chose any. No, I did. I think my last one is one from that one of those chapters, actually. But either way, in the Halloween version here, this one's called Under the Veil of Night, from the Mouth of the Abyss, Molded by Darkness, etc. And someone like Tokoyami is approaching the group, and someone says, no costume today, Tokoyami? And he starts laughing, and it's actually Sero, and he like pops off to Tokoyami head. And I thought that was so funny. And so I don't know who this is. I'm guessing it's Midoriya. I'm pretty sure it's him as All Might, but he's just like, Sero, you dressed as Tokoyami? And then there's another Tokoyami that pops up, and he just says, darn it, we picked the same costume, and it's Kaminari. But Kaminari's version looks like Spoderman was to do Tokoyami,
Yeah.
if you know what Spoderman is.
He got his Tokoyami costume off of Wish.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's funny. One of those Facebook ads. Oh, man. And then it turns out that Tokoyami himself just dressed up like as... to me, I thought it was Todoroki. Like, he's kind of dressed up in like a suave Todoroki. He's got like the eye patch or something. Mm-hmm. And it says Banquet of Darkness there. It's the Kaminari's version says Twilight Chaos. But these just cracked me up. The idea of like the classmates dressing up as another classmate because he is kind of costumey, it just had me dying. I thought that was funny.
I think that number one, I think that the Banquet of Darkness and the other comment were
Twilight
made by
Chaos.
Yeah, I think they were made by those cosplaying as Tokoyami to try to be into character. And 2, in one of the team up missions that Mark and I covered recently, there was a bit where Midnight was teaching the students how to, for whatever dumb reason, dress up like other heroes. And we did have a Tokoyami, I think. Or no. Did we not? I know Tokoyami dressed up as somebody. Well, crap, now I can't remember. But anyway, this is kind of where we thought that particular gag belonged in Smash. And so, like, it fits perfect. Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read it at that time. Mark probably had.
Well, we'll go ahead and get into your last one here. Okay,
it is called 'Tis But a Flesh Wound. And so Izawa is continuing to play the victim here. And so the students are kind of gathered around him, and he's lying down, basically maybe receiving some triage. He's not in his trademark sleeping bag. So they're like, fine, you're a bad actor, but like, try seriously, then we can at least pretend to act naturally. And so Izawa says, I'm always serious. And he takes his binding cloth and he bites down on it and takes out his knife and just stabs himself in the leg. And they're all freaking out. They're like, why did you do that? And he's like, well, now I don't have to act at all. I'll just have Granny heal me up later. And so he's like, well, if you want to go pro, take this training as seriously as I am. And then all the class like has various reactions to this. Like Hagakure passes out. Mineta's vomiting, Sero's covering his eyes, Jiro's looking away, Mina's feeling dizzy like she's about to pass out too, and Izawa's just like, all right, enough of that. Like, it's just funny that they're placed or exposed to an actual injury, and this is how they respond. Like in a safe environment, they're all hurling and passing out, so it doesn't look good.
Such an unexpected injury, you know?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, if anything, because this is kind of where we left off with Izawa in the show. You know, he's the hospital, an injured leg. Yeah. So I don't know. That just felt like it hit in a funny way. There was also, obviously this was your last one, so you didn't include it. I also didn't include this, but seeing Hagakure in this scene, she's just kind of like got her, clothing that you can see. Mm-hmm. There was a funny panel where I guess it was showing like all of the girls' dorm room or something like that, and someone is like leaving. I think it's a Chaco, and she steps on Hagakure. And then they have that realization of like, oh my God, Hagakure, you sleep naked? And she's just like, yeah, old habit. But it's like a recurring thing in that chapter where she keeps getting stepped on because people don't realize that she's there. And for whatever reason, I just thought that was kind of funny.
I think it's Chaco and then Sue steps on her as they're, I guess, go and use the restroom or something.
Yeah, that one, I thought that was pretty funny. So for my last one here, this one kind of cracked me up because this is where effectively Bakugo has been kidnapped by the League of Villains, and we all kind of know how that one played out in the show and in the manga. But in the Smash volume here, he basically just had to play games with them, and if he won, then he could leave. But if he lost, he had to become. My brain just
you got it.
off.
Come on.
I want to say Tokoyami.
No.
Shigaraki.
There you go.
I don't know why that one blanked, but he had to become Shigaraki's bestie.
Yeah.
And there was this whole scene, too, where Shigaraki is playing games with the new members of the League of Villain, and he's just like, all right, whoever draws the longest straw can win, and you have to do, everyone else has to do whatever he says. And then so two of them draw shorter straws, and he's just like, all right, die.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? And so I was totally expecting that, like some kind of a ridiculous game, but they end up playing life, and Bakugo wins. And so after he's won and he's left, he's now being debriefed. So this one is called Brief Debriefing. And it's great because he's talking to our buddy Tsukuauchi, and he's just like, hey, don't worry, we can guarantee your safety now. Like, go ahead and answer my questions honestly. Nothing you say will come back to bite you. And Bakugo's just, I've been honest.
Yeah.
They kidnapped me, fed me a meal, and made me play this dumb game. I won, so they let me walk away. And Tsukuauchi's like, well, obviously meal is some sort of code word.
Yeah.
And he just goes, it was freaking food. And then there's a small little bit here that says law enforcement ate up most of his night. And that got a kick out of me because I could just see him being like, no, I swear, like we played life, I won, and then they let me go. It was the wildest thing.
One of my favorite gags from that particular series of panels was where Shigaraki overcommitted when he tried to tell Bakugo that he wanted him to be his BFF. Yeah. And so he kept dialing it back because he was like, apparently he had been reading a book on like how to be social or friendly. And he was like, okay, so you make this ask, and if that gets denied, then you back it up in steps until somebody finally says yes. So he like goes from, will you be my best friend forever to how about we share a meal? And like, that's how they get to the food eating part. And Bakugo wasn't even really down with that, except for the fact that he was legitimately hungry. So he kind of bit that bullet. It was rather comical.
Yeah, I think I had, when we met up together, I think I had 13 comics, and I ended up cutting 3 of them, and those 3 were villain versions, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, gotcha.
Like some of the villain panels, because they were legitimately some good ones. One in particular that stood out, there was a point in time where Shigaraki wanted to play... what is it called? Not Connect 4, but you like spin the wheel and there's the dots that you have to put
Twister.
Your hands on.
Twister. You want to play Twister with Kurogiri.
He wanted to play Twister with Kurogiri, and Kurogiri was just kind of like, I don't think this game applies to me.
Yeah.
That had me cracking up. So, but in general,
every time we sit down to do these, I pick too many because I'm always like, well, I'm gonna just pick any that are even remotely comical to me for fear that I'm not going to be able to get 10 genuinely funny comics, even if they're just a little funny. Yeah. And I always end up with like 15 or 16. And I'm like, well, crap, now I got to make real decisions on this stuff. So like
exactly.
Every time I go through the same process where I have to cull some of those, and they become basically the equivalent of honorable mentions because we talk about them anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Well, what was funny for me is that I think there were 22 or 21 chapters in this volume because we did volume 3, and I feel like every time I've done this so far, I end up screenshotting like 20 like 4 chapters in because I think the same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get to the end and not have any, and then I'm going to have to reread a bunch and try and figure it out. And then this time around, I definitely got up to like probably 12, and I was only like 9 chapters in, and I realized like, oh crap, I'm going to have to cut out a bunch of these. So
you're going to start having like tighter standards for humor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But man, in general, these were fun. I forgot how good the Smash volumes were. I definitely felt like volumes 1 and 2 hit a little bit harder. Like they were maybe less restrictive. Like I think they were still trying to kind of find their footing. And now it feels like in volume 3, they're kind of following a little bit closer to the storyline. They're kind of doing slice of life stuff. It's not quite as ridiculous. Like there are some bits that are ridiculous, but not as much as volumes 1 and 2. But man, if you're down for it, I'd do another volume.
We can't stop at 3 out of 5 when there's only ever going to be the 5. So yeah, we'll definitely tackle 4 and 5 at some point. I know that you had kind of mapped out a tentative schedule for us in the future. Is that something that you want to share now?
Yeah, I'm excited. So a long time ago, I don't even remember what episode it was. I'll go back and put it in the description of the episode for today. But we did a conspiracy episode where we basically just looked up where the current anime was and the conspiracy theories around like who characters might be, you know, like what storylines might be coming down the road and things like that. And then I think you and I just debated whether or not they were plausible or if we even believed them. So I did that one more time. I just Googled like current, My Hero Academia anime conspiracy theories, and I found a huge Reddit thread full of stuff. And
really?
I think I even sent it to you, and I was like, look, it's easy. I didn't even have to do much. So I'm going to try to plan to pull that up. I'm going to do a little bit of research, and next time it will be me leading you through the conspiracy maze and seeing what you think is plausible here. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting because the anime and the manga are much closer together, I think, now than it was way back when we first started or when we did that episode. Yeah. So it seems like there's less wiggle room for certain conspiracies to breathe out there. But if it's specifically coming from folks that are anime only, there's definitely room for things to be yet divulged or fully explained. So.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've had a lot of big things happen in that last season, and there's still a lot of unknowns and a lot of loose ends. And I think we can see that the end is coming. We probably only have, 3 more seasons maybe?
Yeah, 2 or 3. I think that seems to be the consensus from the discussion taking place in the Discord. The manga is apparently fairly close to putting a big bow on things, presumably. So yeah, It's certainly going to come to an end, and the rumors recently, or since we last recorded, have been swirling pretty hard and fast about a Vigilantes anime. There was at one point somebody on Twitter that said that they got it from reputable sources, which I don't think was true at all, but it was kind of cool to see so much of the My Hero fandom on Twitter be like, if this is legit, this is what we want. Like people being really excited about a spinoff. Like I was talking, I think it was in the Discord actually, about how if Vigilantes does get this anime treatment, it's going to be a part of what I think is a pretty small group of animes whose spin-off gets a treatment like that. Most spin-offs, you might get a few volumes or whatever, and they kind of take on their own shape elsewhere, and they don't get animated. They're just kind of tangential media. But there are some that spin off of the major or the My Hero propers is what we would call it, the propers that do get that treatment. So it would be interesting to see if Vigilante gets treated that way. We have talked about our reservations about it because it's in pristine condition right now. And it could be improved upon, but it could also be mishandled. And what do you want? Would you rather have what's good untouched, or would you let somebody handle it and change things for better or for worse? Because that becomes a roll of the die. Like what we have right now is set in stone. Nobody can screw with it, and we all like it as it is. If somebody, if an animating studio gets their hands on it, I'm not saying that there's a 50-50 chance that they get it better or worse. It might be an 80% chance that they do things much better. But then there's still that 20% chance, 10% chance that they goof something up. And of course, it being an anime and there being fans of it, regardless of what they do, somebody's going to be butthurt about how it's handled. So,
I'm sure. I would ask you, you're more aware of the internet's opinions on My Hero. Is the general consensus that it's been handled well? I know that there was a couple of seasons people complained about, but
I think that I would say that generally speaking, the animation gets lauded, like respected. People that are kind of have a foot in both the anime realm and also the manga realm tend to be the ones that speak the loudest about any kind of inconsistencies or because they have a comparison point, which is fair.
Sure.
But I think a lot of that goes away if you are an anime only. For the most part, I think a lot of those comparison points, which create differences of the potential for differences of opinion, dissipate. So I mean, I haven't had any major issues. We've talked as we've covered the anime of things that we didn't like, things that were illustrated poorly. Like, we're honest about that stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things that don't communicate well visually. But the same can be said if we're, looking off. I can't tell how many times I've said while we were looking at manga panels and saying this, like, I cannot tell what's trying to be conveyed here. Like, it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And we try to handle it as fairly as we can. We're not all hoorah yay MHA stuff. But we tend to skew positive. Like, we don't want to take massive dumps on stuff.
No,
that's what Mark is there for. We call him for that.
We bring in the backup
for his rant segments.
Yes. I really enjoyed Vigilantes. I thought it was a lot of fun, especially for something that was more of a spin-off and at times kind of goofy. There were definitely some really great moments there. So if you've not read Vigilantes, you should give it a shot. Get prepped for a potential anime because it would be super cool. If anything, seeing Knuckle Duster on the big screen would be really cool. I'd love that because he was just a favorite of mine for sure. And you get to find out so much background knowledge. I mean, there's so much that happens in that leads into My Hero that sets the scene for so much. So
yeah, you get like the villain origin story of Stain. Mm-hmm. You get to see Rappa like way more than you did in the actual anime / manga MHA proper. In fact, Jamie, who is consuming My Hero at a fairly decent pace these days, is into season 3, I think, which is where the Shiei Saikai stuff is. And so he finally got to meet Rappa recently, and I was like, he's a light in a dark place. He's so good. And I was like, the worst part is, like, I loved him in the anime, and then when we got to him in Vigilantes, I was like, this guy might be one of my favorite characters. I mean, he absolutely is like in my top 5 characters across all MHA stuff.
Yeah, you also get introduced to the bunny hero. I can't remember her
Mirko.
name. Mirko, who is super cool. Like, I kind of figured that she would just be fan service, but she's so much cooler than that. I mean, what an awesome hero.
You get the fuller, more emotional coverage of the backstory for Kurogiri, with Shirakumo and Izawa and Present Mike. All that stuff has way firmer foundations in Vigilantes.
That's right. That stuff hit so hard in the TV show because we were reading Vigilantes around the same time that episode came out. And I remember just being like in tears watching that episode.
And the anime and manga only, like the MHA proper folks miss out on that. And that is essential material, like for that stuff to really hit hard and give you. I mean, it's not like the manga or the anime of MHA proper mishandled it. There's still an opportunity for. I mean, they convey those emotions, especially on Izawa and Present Mike, very well. Yeah. But to have that real backstory fleshed out, context, in the way that it was in Vigilantes, it's
so good.
Enhanced those scenes by tenfold.
You also get Captain Celebrity, who is a blast.
Eventually.
Eventually. I remember when we were first reading it, we were like, I hope this character dies. And then by the end, we loved that guy. So
yeah, and you do have to suffer through a couple of dance numbers, and those weren't our favorite.
They won't get animated.
We can only hope. Otherwise, we're in for a rough patch of a couple of episodes, probably.
Filler episodes. They'll just be labeled as filler. Well, I think that'll bring us to an end. What do you think?
Yeah. I look forward to discussing these theories. I have no idea. I need to, I guess, look over that list. I don't know that I ever.
No, don't. I'll handle all that. That way, it's all fresh for you. I don't want. My fear is that we will both end up getting spoiled somehow on something. So I'm trying to do the best I can to mitigate that. So let me get some things together, and then I'll run them by you and hopefully come with some strong defenses, so that way you can just absolutely dismantle any theory that I've thought of or find on the internet.
See, I was thinking that I was going to end this episode by saying, so join us on the next episode of the AMP where we get exposed for not knowing a damn thing about My Hero anything. So
That's true. Yeah. I think. Well, the other thing is, it's been such a long time since I've watched or read anything My Hero that I'm going to read some of this and be like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. We're definitely going to get exposed for gaps in knowledge, because we're full of those things.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of AMP, and if you're watching us, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you like this kind of stuff, let us know. Maybe we can try to do more. I might have to pay Adkins to show up on video more, but it's worth it, I think. And like I said, let us know if you enjoyed it. Otherwise, you can go and leave us a rating on iTunes. Spotify is another big thing too for the podcast. All that stuff will be in the description, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
See you guys.